Scions of the Southland, number 271. I don't have a good reference for this number. I don't think there's a famous 271 exactly in the natural universe of things. I don't know. Maybe Hank Aaron's 271st home run was important. Who knows? Uh, Jake Great is here. Akshay Easwaran's here. I am Jack Purdy. We're going to talk about some lacrosse today, some softball today, some baseball, and some golf, as those are the currently active and important sports in Georgia Tech's campus. And to help us with lacrosse, we've been trying to get this on the calendar for much longer than it needed to happen. So finally, we have the head coach of Georgia Tech Lacrosse, Ken Lovic, here. Ken, thanks a ton for hanging out with us. And hey, congrats for making it to nationals again as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a good experience for the guys. Obviously, I know we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's been, I guess, 10 in a row for our guys, which is like kind of the longest streak in MCLA Division One. So we're kind of proud of the consistency the program's built.
Dynastic, even to an extent.
Yes, there you go.
To start, so obviously another fantastic season for y'all, another SELC championship. Just now that you've had about a day or so to reflect after the final, just what sticks out right now about the season for y'all? I apologize that the two games I watched were the ones that did not go so well between Northeastern and the championship game. But where's your head at right now with how the season went down?
It's doing this obviously for a long time, and it's hard to reflect, especially because it's such a weird sort of a redemption season for us a little bit in terms of how some of the games went earlier in the year to how the games went later in the year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, incredibly proud of the guys. I mean, to get to the finals is a grind. I mean, that tournament is not made for the faint of heart. I mean, it's tough 4 games in 6 days. The weather can be brutal, as we learned this year from the wet side of things, as opposed to the hot 100-degree weather. But it's really it's tough on the guys physically and emotionally and mentally, all that combined. So it's hard when you lose the championship game because you realize you got to the top, but you just couldn't quite put the flag on top of the mountain. But with the SELC title in our back pocket, I mean, no one's ever done a three-peat, in the SELC, so they should be proud of that. But again, beating Fuller after the SLC, and then beating Texas and beating Utah Valley, and somehow surviving the Tennessee game. I mean, I'm really, really happy in the season overall.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Three in a row for the conference is awesome. Jake, you would know if any Tech team has won 3 conference championships in a row. I don't think that's actually happened in the NCAA world yet at this point. Maybe the SEC, but who knows?
I was going to say this is about to be a deep pull, but I'm pretty sure swimming did it when they were still in the SEC. But that might as well be ancient history, Jack. I
agree. Yeah, that there is no modern comp to that. Probably right now.
Golf, maybe golf. That comes to mind.
Maybe, yeah, maybe that would make sense. This Liberty game on Saturday, that was a weird game for those that didn't watch. It was a 2:00 game or 1:00 against local time. I was at the Monday night brewing watch party, which is cool. We got to meet some of y'all's alums, which is fun. There was an hour plus delay at halftime for Lightning and Thunder. When you're in that, because I remember there's some famous games, of course, that have like weird weather delays that change games. Did that feel? I mean, obviously it doesn't turn out the way you want, but does that feel like a needed opportunity to have that little extra time at halftime, or was that point was just getting antsy to just want to go play?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit. I think initially when we thought it was only going to be about 30, 45 minutes, you're kind of like, all right, good reset, allow us to kind of regroup. We played poorly at the end of each quarter. We played good solid quarters in the first half, but the end with both quarters is where we kind of let them slip by us, to get the 4-goal lead. And so I think having that reset was really good. But then all of a sudden it became an hour, then an hour and 15, then an hour and 20, then an hour and the skies were as blue as could be. The problem was there was another cell that they thought was going to come down. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't want us warming up and then getting kicked off the field again. So we had to make the decision and wait to see what that cell did. But, after that hour and a half, I mean, they were ready. They were chomping at the bit to get back out there and sort of prove themselves. And of course, they already scored in the first minute of that next quarter, but then our guys really kind of settled in and we had a great remainder of that third quarter at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you gotta get out to 1. It was a 9-8 game, right? In the third quarter before the Liberty kind of got back on things. And of course, go ahead.
Yeah, we kind of got within 1. It was kind of a 2-3 goal game for a long time until we got late in the fourth. But again, that's just kind of like I told other people. I mean, they're a really good squad. You got to kind of almost play mistake-free ball, and we did not play mistake-free ball, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, I had heard some background info on Liberty beforehand from one of y'all's coaches, and he was explaining like just how the people that Liberty had and how face-offs are going to be a big thing in this game, and that was something I noticed the alums were talking about the watch party, was just like seeing just how much that was dictating goal
Yeah.
scoring in that game, which was enlightening to me. I've watched, as you know, not as much lacrosse, so seeing just how impactful that is compared to every other kind of hockey that I've watched, hockey-based sport-ish. That was very interesting. Jake, I know you've got to have something at this point.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, how do I put this? It's very interesting being able to pick your brain at least a little bit, just because I feel like in terms of like the club sports world, there's not quite the same level of like, pressers and things like that. If there was one thing that you want to like tell the world or say, hey, like this is not necessarily the pitch for men's lacrosse. Obviously, you guys are very successful and very good, but like what's that thing that keeps you coming back every year and like getting you in the mix for another successful run? Because I mean, really, no one's doing it better than you guys right now. What's that thing you're taking into next year for all said and done?
It's a great question. I get that a lot actually. And I think the consistency of the program is one thing. Obviously this is my 29th year as the head coach, 30th for the program overall. And so I think just creating consistency and we have a lot of communication with our officers. I mean, we don't run this thing as a dictatorship. It is not, my show or the assistant coach. It is very much, we very much have discussions with the guys about practice times, what we want to accomplish, travel, budgets. I mean, it's all intertwined. And so I think then having a feel of ownership is really important. They're obviously very competitive kids. They're very knowledgeable kids. They're very smart. And so if we can set the goals together, like any good engineer, they know that they're going to try to figure out how to solve that problem and how we get to winning games or winning championships or getting to national tournaments. And so I think that our leadership of our captains every year and us working with them as much as we do, I think is what helps really establish kind of how successful we've been. Because again, we never lay low on just what happened the previous year. We'll have a breakdown meeting with the new leadership next year and start talking about what do we want to do different next year. What is something you want to add to the plate or take away, just to be successful.
That's super super neat getting to hear you talk some about that. I mean, in terms of our experience, it was we had a lot of coach turnover just from the nature of club swim and things like that when we were doing that, and so it's almost a different structure, more like top down from the board towards the coaches, but like the consistency is something to kind of marvel at, and I imagine that kind of helps you build out some of the structures that you guys have. I mean, beautiful like website for not just for the team, but also like the leagues is it's very well polished too. So I don't know. I've always admired that at least. So the consistency seems to be a theme across the board there.
Yeah, and obviously we talked to a lot of other clubs, not just lacrosse. We created an app this year because hockey did, and our guys know those guys and said that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We got to do that. So then again, we can always take ideas from the outside. I mean, and that's what we're. Yeah. I mean, I challenge other coaches and anyone all the time. Like, what different can we do that would help us? Just talk to other people.
Off the cuff, I wasn't planning to ask this. Do you guys do any like particular crossover with like the ladies team or anything like that?
Not as much.
What comes up. Okay.
Yeah, the problem is, we really only have the one field out there, so we've always tried to think about doing like a weekend where we have games, they have games, but it's just we set our schedules. Like our schedule for 26 is already done. They won't have theirs until probably late October when they have their league meetings. We just have to stay way ahead of it for travel and all the stuff we have to book to prepare ourselves. But they're great. They actually work our home games. They run our shot clocks for us and the scoreboard. Like they're super supportive, and we do the same thing. We'll send guys to their home games and help out wherever we can. So that's the biggest crossover. Is that area.
Nice, cool.
I love it. That's cool stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but now with Danny Hall retiring, this makes you the longest tenured head coach at Georgia Tech right now at this point. Now that he's done it for 31 years.
Except maybe I'm the only one without a contract, probably.
Well, that's fair.
Mine is just keep the alumni happy and the players happy, and if they'll agree to have me back, I'll be back every year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Akshay had mentioned you asked your recruiting question.
Yeah. Ken, thank you again for coming on. I think we really appreciate it and getting a lot more deeper insight into sort of our core competency of focusing on some of these more niche, but also like big programs that people don't necessarily know about, especially if you're only following the NCAA sports.
Sure.
Right. But I think in that vein and sort of tied into that question is, especially as the NCAA landscape has evolved over the last 5 years with the introduction of NIL, the expansion of the transfer portal, How has that made your job as a coach in a club game in terms of recruiting and roster management? How do you put together a roster as a club team these days?
I'll tell you, that's been the biggest, that is our number one, number one tackle job. Like we have been trying to figure it out for years. We work really hard at it. We have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of kids we talk to and get their, questionnaires and grades and numbers and APs and GPAs about. I mean, it's huge. Like the one for this coming year was probably over 75 names of people that we rate them, we grade them and rate them, and do the whole things athletically, academically, to try to find the kid that fits our niche, like you talked about, who's going to be, carry a really good GPA, really good test scores, is good at lacrosse, and can get in. I mean, the admissions, we don't get any help there. So that's the biggest hurdle we have is just, I shouldn't say hurdle, because we've done a good job of getting kids in. And it's worked out well, but with lacrosse growing and like you said, I mean, landscape of NCAA sports is going to look a lot different the next few years. So we're actually getting more transfers, like Charlie Ciardello, who is our face-off guy, who did really, really well on Saturday. He's a transfer from Denver, played Division I lacrosse at Denver, and he now transferred back here because he wants to collect that engineering degree that he has been seeking, and just realized Denver was not the place for him to do that. And so we're going to see more of that, I think, as rosters start shrinking. But again, we're still battling for that pretty small population of kids, that maybe get an MIT, a Bucknell, Michigan, Cal Berkeley is one of our big rivals in terms of recruits. Like kids are a lot of times deciding between us and them. And so it's a constant struggle. But Matt Edmonds, who's our recruiting coordinator, and Bob Shack, an alumni of our program, have done just a marvelous job. And they are just pounding the pavement, trying to find the kids, and we bring them down for senior days. The football team is actually nice enough to give us tickets every year for our senior day.
Awesome.
We bring a bunch of recruits in, and we take them to a football game and show them campus, the whole 9 yards. So we're really no different in terms of how we actually go about it. It's just tougher not having sort of any exemptions when it comes to admissions part.
Yeah, definitely seems like you get the population that hits that crossover pretty well. I mean, the results speak for themselves. So I mean,
I think it's the good thing about engineering is, it doesn't really, take a hiccup, economically. Like there's always a need for engineers. And if you Google lacrosse and engineering, I believe we're still number one that pops up. And we've worked really hard to make sure that does happen. So when kids are starting to look, they're going to find their way to us.
Right. And that makes sense.
SEO,
Right.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, Tech does. I mean, we've known this. Me and Jake have known this from the club swim side too. It's just like Tech can fit in that intersection of the people that don't necessarily want to play D3 sports, but want to keep playing their sport at a pretty high level. And once you put the right tools together to actually offer a good opportunity for that, it makes perfect sense as to why you can maintain some good success in that department.
And to bounce off that, I maintain that Tech sells itself to the kind of kid that it need that would be interested in Georgia Tech.
There's a reason there's a reason the admission numbers keep climbing in terms of applications.
And I'll be honest, the one other area that really works well for us is the life balance thing. Like Sunday morning, for instance, we got home late Saturday night after the game, and we probably had 8 or 9 kids that flew out Sunday to go study abroad. We're starting co-ops and things like that. And so when we tell them, we're very honest about that. A lot of our kids are in fraternities. A lot of them, do the co-op or study abroad, and we heavily encourage that. And we think that's a great part of being a college student. And when you're a varsity athlete, you just don't have that opportunity to do those things. And a lot of kids really appreciate that we're not trying to tie them down, that we want them to experience the full college life as best they can.
Study abroad, internships, the course load, and the classes that you want to or need to take. I mean, that's huge. That's invaluable. And then you got the social side of it too. But
and I imagine that feeds back into just this life cycle of alumni staying involved. Just like you enjoy the Tech experience with the lacrosse experience so much that you don't necessarily want to take yourself out of that world if you can help it. So that makes perfect sense. It's just keeping the lifeblood of the team alive for beyond college years.
And it doesn't hurt with networking and everything else for job opportunities and everything else. So it all kind of just plays in together, and all of them know the grind these kids go through during their 4 or 5 years in their school. So they can certainly have appreciation and an understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah. Diving a little bit more into that recruiting and also that the transfer process too. And I guess a little bit about talking about opponent scouting. I work as a data analyst or a data engineer in my day job. So and obviously going to Tech, I feel kind of obligated to ask this question. What sort of data, if you can, So a little bit of the secret sauce here. What sort of data plays into your analysis of these opponents? Are you looking at just video? Are there match reports that you're getting? Are there match reports that you're compiling? Like, how does that pipeline for, let's say, just to take opponent analysis as a specific example, how does that pipeline play a role, or how does data play a role in that process for you guys?
So yeah, funny enough, one of our alumni who is a data analyst, it actually runs our spreadsheets for us. And so the first things we look at first and foremost is academics. We got to find out if the kid can get in. And so it's a combination of their APs, it's a combination of their unweighted GPA, any ACT score, and then on top of it, where they're from. Like, again, we've been doing this for a long time where we can actually evaluate a Florida kid, versus a New York kid versus a Maryland kid, private school versus public school. Like, we've been able to collect enough data over the years to put all that into a formula. And then that basically pops out a number for us between 1 and 6, 1 being least chance of getting in, 6 being the greatest chance of getting in. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, there's still the essay to write, so that's a whole another separate thing. But the 1 through 6 gives us a base, and then athletically, that's where the other coaches jump in, like myself and Coach Freeman and others, where we'll get highlight films, game films, from these individuals, and then we start analyzing where they fall athletically. And then we'll, same thing, give them a score between 1 and 6, and then basically we just sort of take those two numbers that get an average, and that pumps out sort of our rankings of which kids we're going to pursue the most, which kids have the best chance of getting in. And sometimes there may be a kid who's a 6 academically, but 3 athletically. But you know what? That's not a terrible thing for us to get a kid in like that in. But there may be a kid who's 4 and 4. Well, that's going to be another. That's going to be a really good one for us, a little better athlete, but maybe doesn't have as strong a chance to get in. So that's kind of how we do it all on that end.
That's cool. I've worked in our admissions office before, and it's just seen how some people try to analyze this kind of thing, and that's very on the nose of just the smarter ways just to kind of figure out the puzzle of how you're going to figure out who's going to be at Tech and who's not going to be at Tech. And I assume it's just getting harder because more and more kids are getting in. So in theory, this slot availability in terms of just ease of getting in is not any easier as well, unless you can find a certain pathway or whatever that kind of helps ease the odds. But those are few and far between at this point. So
that's a big thing for us, by the way. We probably have 8 kids on the team, right? I got to think about the new roster, not that one that just stopped or the one that just ended. But the pathway program and the 3-2. I mean, that's been huge for us. We've got a lot of our kids come in as a sophomore from UGA, Kennesaw, Georgia State, wherever. In fact, Brooks Barrow, our top attack, but his younger brother just got in on his pathway. He's getting in from Kennesaw. Nice. He'll be joining us next year, and so that's become a real popular thing for us because they get deferred and they get waitlisted, and then that's right. So we just got to wait a year to see them. It kind of sucks, but in the end, we know we're at least going to get them in a year.
Right. So that's very interesting. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, the varsity teams aren't using that. Like that just isn't a tool I have to worry about whatsoever. Yeah. And so that's interesting to see how those pipelines that are not intentionally made for athletic reasons becoming very relevant in the athletic context.
Yeah, I want to ask one thing about that. I just thought of it because you noted some of the, I guess, late arrivals on the front end. In terms of back end, I know we've seen some 5th year and graduate players this year. Do you guys leverage like the MSBS or like grad school type degrees at all to keep kids around for longer, or does it just kind of like if it works out, it works out kind of thing?
If it works out, I mean, we still have an eligibility standard. This was the last year for the COVID year. So like guys like Pierce and Brooks, they got to play this extra year because of that. So, it's only 4 years. But funny enough, what you mentioned, we actually have one of our alum who's actually trying to create an AI program for us that will data search all the Division I rosters for kids who are studying engineering and maybe on the roster not getting playing time, so that we can contact them about looking to transfer. Like that, this was a big discussion we just had a couple of weeks ago. So I'm excited to see what will come of that, because a lot of our programs like Virginia Tech and people I know that in the SELC and MCLA, they get a lot of these varsity transfers of kids who spend a year or so and realize it's just not for them anymore. So let's be a little more proactive, reaching out to these kids that are in engineering and see if there's an interest in them wanting to transfer if that NCAA experience isn't quite what they thought it would be.
And I assume that counts towards eligibility in MCLA, right? If you're playing a year or two up. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So you got 4 years to play. Like Charlie, he spent 1 there, realized it wasn't for him, transferred here, and we'll have more.
I chuckle because I've definitely seen kids in club swim do like 3-4 years at a school and then come and get a PhD somewhere and swim for
Right.
another 3 or 4. But a little different league.
And that's
But
exactly, but that's exactly why the NCAA adopted that,
yeah,
15 years ago, whatever it was, because that was what was happening. Is that a lot of these teams that had the right grad programs had kids who were playing at Princeton for 4 years or Syracuse,
yeah,
and then coming to play 2 years us, and we just said, you know what, that's an unfair advantage for them. We need to dial this down.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Going into next year, I mean, you said you already got the schedule nailed down, which is, I guess, that's not normal, I guess, for most teams out there and whatnot.
Right.
How, I guess, does, and knowing how your roster is going to form, what changes for you in the offseason? Do tactical changes happen? Obviously, roster changes are going to happen, but like, what's your focus point now as you're prepping for next season?
The biggest fun is finding a field.
Fair.
Yeah, because they're replacing the COC turf, the Rose Stamps turf this fall,
Yeah.
and so so I'm using all my contacts to figure out where I can get space for us to practice right now. But that's we'll figure that part out. But yeah, we usually use the fall to figure out what our tactic will become spring, because we're going to have a lot of new faces this year. Obviously, we had a big senior class graduating. In fact, our entire starting attack with Rosie and Brooks and Pierce are gone, and so we don't know yet. Actually, EJ and I. I'm just driving home from my son's lacrosse practice. He coaches with me or my son's travel team, and we're kind of already starting to talk about it because you see the film, you see it all, but until you get them in person, it's kind of hard to figure out really what they're going to bring to the table. But we had a great recruiting class. I mean, it was one of the few times where we were really excited. I mean, it was just there was a late burst and a lot of kids committed. It's funny enough, after we won the SELC, we had a kid from Florida who was deciding between Florida and us, and after we beat them in the finals, he committed to us that next day.
Nice.
Which was nice.
Love it.
So it's almost like the football things like that. Sometimes you have some kids who are trying to decide and trying to figure out what's best for them, but we closed out the year really well. So I'm excited about the new kids to replace the old, but yeah, technician wise and the things we want to do, we'll start formulating. We have a base plan of things we like, riding, clearing, and base offense. But yeah, once we get them on the field, then we'll get a better sense of really what we have.
Nice. That all makes sense. Sweet. Y'all got anything else before we move on here?
No, I was going to actually touch on the departures real quick because I noticed that in the rosters and things like that. But I mean, sounds like you guys are locked and loaded and ready to go in terms of that. So.
Well, the freshmen certainly have it laid in front of them. I mean, if we've won 3 in a row, they've got the streak has to continue. The pressure will be on them.
The bar is high. The bar is as high as anywhere else on campus. So that is awesome.
Exactly.
Ken, I know. Ken, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This was a pure joy for us just to learn more about the team and just how this experience works related to our various college experiences. I swear y'all will win a game I watch next year. This is not my fault. I swear.
It is not. No, my mom says the same thing, by the way. Whenever she watches it, is when we lose.
Oh man, so awesome. Well, in that case, Ken, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll hopefully have you back next season. We'll just plan on. We'll just say same time next year after you win the championship. We'll just say that. How about that?
Well, guys, I appreciate your support and appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ken.
See you soon.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. On to a quick break before we get to the rest of our show for tonight. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is the very best place to find Georgia Tech apparel. I touched on the votes last week. We've touched on some other new stuff. I'm gonna go back to something that's a little bit older, and I want to highlight that you can get Georgia Tech NIL player shirts. Do not forget about that. Not only NIL, you got your Haynes King. You've also got some retired numbers and names in there too. You've got Mark Price, Kenny Anderson, and I guess I'll throw Drew Burris in there to cap things off there. His number 8 is still on the site as well. As always, free shipping on orders over $80 every day. Use our code FTRS. Tell them we sent you. That'll get you 10% off. And keep an eye on their site for new stuff all the time. And section103.com is where you can find it. Gents, back to you.
Okay, that was awesome. I'll just say that.
That was great.
We've been due for a good interview here. I think the energy was needing it. This was a gaping hole in our program for the last while here, as our lives have been very busy. But I'm glad we filled that hole just now.
Buddy, I'm ready to run through the rest of the stickball slate here. I'm ready to run through a wall.
Let's go. All right,
So
baseball.
ready.
played. They had a midweek. They had two midweeks. They won both those midweeks. I forgot who they were playing in those midweeks, but they won, so that's what matters. But the weekend was the big slate here against Louisville, number 20 Louisville, that is, and they got through a 2-1 series win. Friday, uh, we all thought the season was over in a sense, not actually over, but after we lost, what was it, 13-2, something like that,
It was 16-2 in 7 innings,
16 to 2.
which is a 14-run deficit. And I
It's
would
not
like to
good.
note that if you add the results of the series win, which Georgia Tech did sweep the doubleheader on Sunday, Tech, even though they won 6-0 in the first game and 2-1 in the second game, still was outscored on the weekend 7-0, or 7 runs. So,
You know,
yeah, it was a weird one, but it was a very baseball weekend. I think
it's a
it's kind of like the anti-Clemson series. If you remember, we killed them in the
right,
in the
right.
one game and lost two tight ones the other way.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
anyways,
I
yeah,
get your point. Danny Hall did note, he's like, once you lose a game, it don't matter how many runs you lose it by, you lost anyways. So at that point, you just move on straight on. Yeah, so they're supposed to play Saturday and Sunday per a normal weekend series. Saturday, if you're in Atlanta, you'd know it was a very rainy day. And so it turned into a 10 a.m., 1 p.m. doubleheader on Sunday, which was also the day where they were celebrating Danny Hall and his retirement from the program, because this is the last regular season games at for his tenure at Georgia Tech. Before the game, they retired his number 17 number, which is really awesome, because he does have an honorary degree, and so he does beat that qualification at least enough to put his number out there next to Mark Teixeira's in right field. So that was a cool moment for him and his family. But yeah, Sunday was a very good day of baseball for this team. It was a remarkably good day.
I don't think we can skip idly by two things. One, it was Georgia Southern and Mercer in the midweeks for
Oh,
those
thank you.
keeping
Yes.
track at home. Both pretty good opponents. So definitely, good in-state notable. I didn't want to get too far past that. The other notable thing that I am not skipping idly past, straight on to Sunday, is the fact that Georgia Tech gave up 13 runs in the second inning on Friday. I know a loss is a loss is a loss, but 13 runs does make me a little nervous, despite, I would say, truly excellent pitching performances in the second and the third game. It was kind of like about as polarized of feeling
Yeah.
about our staff, because Sunday was quite excellent, if I do say so.
It was. Danny was very. I asked him, like, was the day off helpful? He's like, it may have been, just just do a complete full reset, have no game, just disassociate for a hot sec before getting into that doubleheader.
And in that first game of the doubleheader, Brady Jones allowed 1 hit in 7 innings. They did play a shorter game, so that way they could get in, could get in both of those. 1 hit, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. So not a ton of swing and miss stuff, but he didn't have to face a lot of batters, and he only threw 96 pitches in 7 innings. I mean, that's a pretty solid body of work right there, in terms of
great.
somebody
Yeah.
that we've been kind of eyeing for, like, hey, like, we going to get some improvement. That I would say that he's kind of rounded into form as the season's gone on. At least a decent piece there.
He's had 4 quality starts in his last 5 appearances. So
Yep.
yeah, that's good for at any level. Game 2, we win 2-1. This was they played a full 9 innings in this game. Jalen Payton threw the first 6 innings, and then Mason Patel finished in the last 3 innings. Patel only allowed the only hit of the game, which was a home run. It was the longest home run I've ever seen in Russ Chandler by far. Like, that ball cleared the trees in right field by at least 10 feet. It cleared the street. It had to have hit the sidewalk at worst on the other side of Fowler Street.
That was long even on TV. I mean, it was something. Hey, one thing I do want to note, that very next inning, oh, I forget who was up for Louisville, but very deep fly ball. I would say probably out of the park, had it not been caught at the
Yep.
at the fence by Caleb Daniel. That saved the game. I think we're talking about this series maybe a decent clip differently with how quiet the bats were in game 2 on Sunday. If he doesn't reel in, and not only was that a home run, that would have been a 3-run home run as well. So
yeah, we would have gone down 2 at that point. And, I mean, we were getting guys on base. It wasn't like they were like completely dead kind of thing. There wasn't much driving guys in, big hits kind of thing going on. No, I mean, that catch. I mean, I tweeted on our accounts that catch is probably the most important defensive play of the season we're going to have. just because of how much changes based on that catch. Is now we get 2 out of 3 against Louisville. That does a lot to potentially impact our. Are we hosting potential going forwards or just rankings? Also in the ACC standings themselves, we get to go into third instead of back and forth now at this point because we're a game up on whoever's below us. So that did. I
on somebody.
I forgot. I knew there's one. I knew it's one game. That's what I remembered. No, the amount of things that flip if that ball isn't caught by Daniel goes a long way. And he looked kind of like flipped around when he was going for that ball, but once he locked eyes on that ball, it was like, oh wait a second, he might actually have this. Off the bat, that thing was smoked too. Like from the press box in that game, you could tell it was kind of low, so it looked like it was gonna have a shot at being caught, but it wasn't obvious in the moment. So that was, I mean, yeah, big time.
And I got a smell test type thing for you. So I have updated the USI. We're top 25. I think we're 23. We have Q2 games again. We're 3-1 in current Q2 games. So good job,
Yes.
Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's opponents, I should say, for playing good enough and or bad enough to have Q2 games again. But I'll put it like this: so USI's 0-1 scale for that tournament piece. And after this weekend's game, it rates Georgia Tech as 65.9. So it's 0.659, and Louisville as 66-1. I feel like that. I mean, one inning against Louisville on Friday subsiding. These two teams seem to pencil out both as pretty good and a lot of ways to beat you. Whether it's the mound and keeping you quiet, or I mean, Louisville's fast and they can hit the ball a million miles, or just get a couple balls in play. And I thought that was very evident in different ways between the two teams. So
yeah, we did a lot of good stuff here, and also we did some lineup shifting on Sunday as well. Danny Hall decided to not have Kyle Lodis hit leadoff anymore. He was saying in the presser he almost had Kent Schmidt do it, and then it just wasn't. He was up at 3 a.m. He was like, I don't know, and he just ended up going back to Drew Burris at the top of the leadoff spot. He hasn't hit leadoff all year. He did not have an amazing day at the plate on Sunday, but it was fine all the same. Well, once we got the runs, Kent Schmidt had a multi-hit game, I believe. He did something that a guy that's known to be the fastest man in the Major League Baseball has done, which is a score from second base on a routine pop-up or fly ball. In this case, the one that Kent Schmidt scored on was a pop fly that went into Louisville's dugout, but the first baseman, the catcher, the pitcher, the second baseman all ran to the ball, and as the first baseman caught the ball, they were like unsure if he had caught it, started celebrating when the umpire did call he was out. At that point, Kent Schmidt had read the situation and had already come down to third base and saw that nobody was covering home plate, sprinted home, and got us the first run of the game on a foul pop fly that was inside the first. That was like didn't even reach first base. That is some heads up baseball right there.
The Instagram comments on this one. So Tech Baseball posted the clip on Instagram. They're hilarious because everyone in the comments is like your father. Your like General you father at like your little league games talking about fundamentals, and
I thought you were talking about literally my dad because he definitely had some words about that. So
I could see your father saying this for sure, but like the typical the way that it's like the Alpharetta dad like yelling at his TV about base running or like fielding fundamentals. This is what's going on in the comments here. It's a really great play. Also, Louisville's, I think, first baseman who makes that catch comes up holding the ball and like really happy that he has the ball in his mitt, and then realizes immediately what's going on and tries to sprint to the home plate. It's great. It's true comedy. It's great.
The pitcher always should be covering home plate in a situation like this. That's all I know. But anyways,
hey, Louisville first baseman who call foul balls real well. It's not a problem for their softball team. So that's all I'll say there.
I agree. I agree. I fully endorse that comment. Anyways, so right now, Tech's at 37-15 record is they're tied for the best they've had in 15 years. 17-10 in the ACC. So even with the 7-game losing streak and all those and all the little the lows we've had, this team is still doing as well as any in beyond recent memory at this point. Like we're talking early 2000s at this point, or early 2010s. So it's been a bit, and they're still doing quite well. And the pitching is where you need to be. Like a pitching performance like we saw between Payton now becoming the Sunday starter, and just he's had 11 innings of two-hit ball. Like that's massive. We needed like a true other guy because it was Caden Spivey was getting those Sunday starts, and it wasn't amazing for a hot sec there. And now it's like, okay, if we can roll between McKee to Patel to Payton, and see what else it's fill in gaps like that when you're in the double elimination situation. That's going to be massive come tournament time.
I mean, look, three serviceable pitchers, and I'll touch back on McKee in a sec, but three serviceable pitchers is, again, much greater than any number of serviceable pitchers that Tech has had since 2019. So, like, it's a relief, I think, after many years of complaining about pitching variability and underperformance, to have a staff that I think, like, even with a situation like that Friday start for McKee where he just kind of got really put under pressure in that second inning. It's a revelation, I think, to have a staff that you can, like, say weekend over weekend, that, hey, I can rely on you to go at least 5 or 6 innings, and then I can turn it on to a 1 or a 2 bullpen guy, get him in the mix, and close out the game, right? So I think this, regardless of what happens through the rest of the month and into June or whatever happens, right? I think we should, when we do a season recap, we should come back and really give the pitching staff, both on the coaching end and the players, their flowers, because this has been a really, really good performance all around.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, this is the point. Maybe I know offline we talked about the Braves being the similar situation of like, as long as you've got the couple pitchers you need, that makes a playoff series, that can swing a playoff series kind of thing. And it's this very similar thing for these regionals. It's like, as long as you got a couple pitchers that can eat a lot of innings for you, that can flip how an entire regional tournament goes. So it'll be a big thing.
Before we move on, though, I am a little, not to say a lot of positive things and then do like
bats are not amazing
this
right
on a
now.
bad note.
Bats
are not really cooking right now, so that's one thing. I think Tate and McKee, like, yes, the second inning for him on Friday was not super great. I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, oh, he's been due, but his performances have sort of been, I think, as we've sort of tracked that ERA and FIP over the last couple of weeks, he's come down to earth a little bit,
right? Yeah.
Over the last few weeks, maybe in the last month. It's not something to monitor. I mean, every pitcher has their, a game like this, and
it matters more when we arrive at tournament time. It's like, okay, how is he doing now, and what's the recent data show? Yeah,
I honestly think that this weekend against a very good opponent is going to be a good test, just in terms of the mentality portion of that, right?
Yep.
It's like, hey, you had a really rough start last week. Can you bounce back on 6 days rest? Which I guess sounded a lot different in my head, but on 6 days rest, and say, look, like, I'm going to battle back. I'm going to put together a start that's more in line with my existing metrics, or more in line with with the pitcher that I know I can be and the team trusts me to be. And how does he bounce from there? Because, look, he's been a really good pitcher. Patel too. They've been really good pitchers. We've been talking about some of these basic metrics for them the entire year. And again, like, this has been a really good staff that has carried the load in recent weeks too, especially when the bats have not been as active. So, I think it's not something to be concerned about, but it's definitely something to monitor. How about that?
Yep, I agree. A positive Burris point that we got from the team. He's at 65 runs scored this year. If he gets to 70, he'll be the first Jacket since Richard Lewis in 2000 and 2001 to have scored 70 runs in consecutive seasons as a Yellow Jacket. Burris got to 73 last year, so that'll be a fun point. Jake, what you got?
I got one more thing. I think, we kind of joked about Tech being pretty much safely in. Needs report, boydsworld.com, in terms of top 45, generally that threshold for being an at-large team. Top 32, Georgia Tech has, quote, no more wins needed. Put it on the pile, guys. I think they're
in their 2 seed.
They're in their 2 seed, because that's the other side of that. Top 8, top 16, quote, no way to reach the threshold. So barring Tech, sweeping and then potentially, being they won the ACC by going through the tournament. I think if Georgia Tech does not lose between now and 2 weeks from now, they're hosting. I don't care what a ratings report says. But in terms of what's left in the regular season, solid 2 seed. They're in. Start circling the calendars for 3 weeks from now.
Where they'll go, hopefully we don't get sent to Georgia again. That'd be the closest probably because they're probably going to host. You could definitely see Auburn or Bama as potential. I mean, Bama's kind of fighting with us at the same time to get a final hosting spot because they're ranked right now and could climb up there. They got 2 wins over Georgia this weekend. So probably going to be at worst 1 state away if all things. We could go to Coastal Carolina as well. That probably will be the best spot for us, and just in terms of who we play when it's all said and done, because you avoid an SEC team then. But we'll see how it goes. So yes, this weekend we play Thursday through Saturday, not Friday through Sunday, at Duke. So we'll have 2 consecutive weekends out in Durham. This will be on Duke's campus, of course, because we're playing them. They are 20th ranked. I mean, as Jake mentioned, basically, if we sweep this series and then win win 3 straight in the tournament, that's going to be 6 wins against. That would make 8 straight wins against ranked teams by that point after beating Louisville twice in a row. And that would be so. That's the best case scenario. And yes, very few teams are winning 8 straight games against ranked teams in a row. So if we do that, yeah,
very few games are losing 7 in a row. To be fair, so
true.
like
it
cuts both ways.
You are correct. You are correct.
Little
Very
A,
few
little a
teams
B,
of this
like,
caliber. How about that?
Right. Of what we're asking.
That'll get you. Yeah.
Of what we're saying to get to the best potential spot for this team. So yeah. Otherwise,
Well,
probably go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say in their last 5, 6, 7, 8, they're 8 of their last 9. Like that's how baseball. Basketball's a game of run, baseball's a seasons of runs.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Sports
I mean,
cliche,
literally,
stack
yes.
some on top of the pile. We got to start checking them off. Bingo
It's also-
cards, circle them.
Bingo. I mean, a pun, I'm sure, completely intended. In terms of rankings, we were just barely not ranked in the coaches poll, 4 points behind Ole Miss in the ranking at number 26, which would have me assume that in the D1 poll we were very close to getting ranked there as well. So I would treat us right now as the number 26 team in the country. That could be anywhere from like 22 to 26 for that matter. So that's that. All right. Any last? Go ahead.
I was going to say they're right in that mix for with that. Like there are 5 teams playing for 4 spots. It feels like, for that double bye in the ACC tournament, and I mean Duke is currently that 5th team.
Yeah. Well, so that's a big. Yeah, I'll note that. Yeah. So right now Tech is 3rd by a game. They are 2 games back of the number 1 team, who I believe is Florida State at the top of the conference right now. So
16-8.
So it's Tech in theory can finish as the number 1 team in the ACC after this weekend if things go the right way. They need a lot of help, and they'd have to sweep Duke to get that done. But in theory, there is a way for Tech to climb to either 2 or number 1 in the ACC, or drop as far as 5th as well. So there's a lot of permutations left to happen in ACC seeding. You just got to be 4 and better, basically. You just get to make sure you stay in that top 4. Get a win probably does that for you, but get in that 4th spot, and then you have a double bye. You save some arms. Don't have to burn the key early, and that's just kind of the stuff you need. So, any last bits before we move on to softball?
Who is Florida State playing this weekend?
They're
playing.
That is a good question.
They played. This weekend is the 16th. They're playing UNC. So it's like everyone in that top 4 or 5, with the exception of NC State, who's going out to Stanford. But the other, so NC State, set them aside, they're going to Stanford, but that Georgia Tech, Duke, North Carolina, Florida State, they're all playing each other. So,
yeah.
All right.
It is a very, very important weekend.
This will be a good scoreboard watching weekend. So, see how that goes. Okay, on to softball, who I believe I forgot if we had not talked or did talk about the ACC tournament, but they won their first game against Cal 8-0, which we noted was going to be a big need to kind of secure an NCAA tournament spot. They lost to Florida State 8-0 in the quarterfinal of the ACC tournament. And yesterday on the selection show, Tech got in the tournament for the 2nd time in the Eileen Morales head coaching era, 5th time in her coaching career at Tech. But for the first time since, 2019, 2021? I forget. Sorry, 2021? Yeah, 2021.
2022.
Sorry, yes. 2022, when they went to Florida, had the cool win against Wisconsin, and then lost to Florida. And guess what? They're back at Florida. Right back in Gainesville, where it all last happened. And they're going to be in a pod with Florida Atlantic, who we play, and Mercer. Jake, who was the last team in this tournament?
I actually had it flipped when I pulled it. I thought it was Georgia Tech, but here's my caveat.
Okay.
So the NCAA did this thing where they added AQ in parentheses behind all the automatic qualifiers,
Hmm.
which they sometimes do on the selection one. But they also went back and added it after random selections of previous numbers.
Hmm.
So thanks, NCAA. That just borked a bunch of the data. And because I was like, oh, I'll just wipe it and start again, it also infected all those previous ones. So that being said, I think they wound up second if you include post Sunday results, but I
Hmm.
took the last clean sheet that I could, and that was, I think, Saturday or Friday results. So
Got it.
either way, last four in. If you look at Florida, they're the number 3 seed in the tournament, and Georgia Tech is a 3 seed. And if you kind of do some backwards math counting back up from the end, you got the 16 lower rated conference champions, and then boom, boom. So
Hmm.
that it's probably by the skin of their teeth, if I had to
Yeah.
guess. They could very well have been the last, or
Back. Yeah.
1 to 6 last teams in the tournament. And
Yeah.
you kind of just send people to the geographic nearest place at that point. So
That Cal win matters a lot. Like that, they
yes,
needed one more good win like that was gonna do that can do a lot in those situations, and that certainly
Jack,
had an impact.
they've won one game in the last month since
Right.
April
Yeah.
12th.
Right. We mentioned this last week. Right. Yeah, like they needed to get a win. Like they absolutely needed to get off the schneid here, and they did,
Yeah.
which is a big freaking deal. A loss to Florida State is understandable. They're Florida State. We are not Florida State or
Well,
anything
also,
approaching Florida State yet, quite yet.
yeah, that was a tough game.
Yeah.
That was a real tough game, and I don't want to freak you guys out, but do you know who the number one team in softball RPI is right now?
Probably
Florida
them
State or
or the
Florida.
No,
Gators. The Gators.
it's Florida.
Ah,
It's
Jesus.
Florida.
Dang it.
Um, I do not want to be a Debbie Downer, but this is a very
This is
scary
spooky.
matchup. This
It's
is a very,
spooky.
very scary matchup for Georgia Tech. And I'm gonna draw a parallel here.
All
Do you
right.
remember the beginning of the year? We
Mm-hmm.
played Kentucky and Coastal Carolina. If you kind of read down the list of RPI, Georgia Tech did finish 26 in RPI, so good showing there. Right below Georgia Tech, Coastal. Right below Coastal, Kentucky. Skip 2 spots, and you got Florida Atlantic. If you look
Oh,
at USI, if you look at our rating, we have Florida Atlantic closer to a top 15, 16 type of team. It is
wow.
not an easy assignment.
No.
First game will be tough. Second game will be tougher, unless by some crazy miracle Mercer wins? Question mark. But then again, we've seen Mercer this year, have we not?
Yeah.
Do,
Yep.
do you all remember what happened in that game?
It wasn't good.
I
It
would not
wasn't
call it.
good.
I'm not called very comfortable. And for those that may not have the results memorized, it was a 5-8 loss to Mercer at Georgia Tech. So not ideal.
And a very interesting group of teams for us specifically. How these tournaments work. So we're going to play Florida Atlantic Friday at 2 o'clock. If we win that game, we'll be at the top of the winners bracket, or we'll be in the winners bracket, so to say, and we will play the winner of the Florida Mercer game on Saturday afternoon. All likelihood, that's going to be Florida. And then if you lose that game, you got to go play a losers bracket situation. Basically, the easiest path is win your first game on Friday, beat Florida Atlantic. Hope that Florida loses that game to Mercer, because then you got to play a team that's no matter what had extra games.
Then you have to play a 4 seed that beat you, Jack.
I prefer that over playing the Gators. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize
Right.
the wildness of this
Right.
situation.
And
Right?
then yes, and then you hope you win that game, and then you're playing a team that's already played a game at that point on Saturday, and then carry it.
Yeah.
If at that point you hope you've got momentum that's really working your way, and that you can carry that through Sunday. Again, I think this kind of feels a lot like how I've talked about how we have the ability to beat really good teams when we have the right pieces in place to get a game. Like you have to have just enough hitting to counteract a couple runs in the circle, but then also you really need Sophia Boyles to be on her game. And that's how we were somewhat good last time in the NCAA tournament. Is Blake Nelliman was just pitching out of her mind for a little bit and kept us relevant in that tournament until the gas basically ran out. So it's gonna. Thankfully, we have an Elliman and a Kinsey Norton that can do some work, but it's going to need to be another perfect storm to get out of this regional.
Also, I would like to issue one corrections and or errata. I had scrolled down one line. Florida is actually number 2. Florida State's number 3
Oh.
though. So neither are Texas A&M, but I don't think it makes it any less spooky.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, so that's where I'm at. If they somehow do win this regional, they likely are going to go to Duke or to Georgia. So the spook
Oh
just
joy.
does. Yeah, I know the spookiness is just truly terrible, no matter what happens here. Or we just win and it doesn't. We don't care. Uh, I I I say all that. I want to just note they're finally back. Like I think the big important thing is they're back. We've talked for about like a year and a half at this point. Of just like okay, either like they were kind of close last year, but a tier behind that tournament level team. This year, so many new faces, completely new infield, riding on like some now very experienced pitching, and with a couple arms behind that can actually eat some innings, and it worked. Like they were never really out of the tournament, so to say, based on how we were tracking it, and they even with a little bit of a slide, they held on. So I think all in all, this is if this feels like a big success point just in terms of what we wanted to see in terms of progress for the program.
Yeah, I I'd say so. I mean, obviously the season's not over. I don't know what it is about the softball versus the baseball slate where I look at this and everything freaks me out, and then I look at Georgia Tech being, 1 or 2 being like, they're still spooky. So,
Right.
and also another errata. I completely read the RPI sheet wrong, so everyone just disregard
Oh
all the
no.
relative RPIs I mentioned. Florida Atlantic's actually above that, above us in that too. So shame on me for not writing down actual notes before I launched off into that. So.
I mean, it makes for a good narrative, personally.
It
Yeah.
made for a much better narrative than the real story. So whoops. But
Yeah,
we
who
did
needs facts?
exactly. One thing I do want to just kind of circle back on is I think this feels like a build maybe and the last one did too in
Yeah.
2022, but it feels like it's kind of a culmination and also this is a team that's at least from me maybe, and maybe this is me trying to overspeak to that. I don't know that I necessarily gave them the full shine that they were due. They played a extremely tough schedule,
Yeah.
12th in the country. Non-conference was 13th, so maybe your conference schedule is arguably even harder than it has been in the past with having Cal and Stanford in there too. So
Mhm.
just want to dwell on that positive while we're still kind of in that region of the world and obviously who knows what comes next. But yeah, I think considering they didn't necessarily have like the Clearwater marquee craziness this year, the fact that their schedule was somehow even harder, I think is worth dwelling on and real accomplishment to fight up that hill to stack enough wins to get to where they're
Yeah.
going. So.
Agreed. I think that's yeah, absolutely a good point. Alyssa Willer was named third team All ACC a few weeks ago. Grayson Tucker was named ACC All Freshman, which is awesome to see. So like the young blood has been what I guess we're hoping because we knew they were a highly ranked. This was a highly ranked recruiting class. We knew that this was going to be at least a much better floor for the team than we've seen in a while in terms of just raw talent, so to say, because you got to kind of see the experience actually build up once you're a freshman, and pairing that with a very experienced senior pitching between Kinsey and Sophia. That's helped create this storm be a little bit better, all things considered. Gives a route towards hopefully a much more sustainable winning culture. At least they've been winning a more wins culture, so to say, for the next couple of years here.
Right, and to that point, I think what Jake said about this being a build is pretty salient, right? When they made this tournament the last time in 22, and Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, because you'll probably know this better than I would. If I remember correctly, that team was chock full of seniors, and then they take a step back in that immediately intervening year, or at least if they weren't seniors, they were upperclassmen, and it felt more like you're at if you're thinking about it at like a cycle, it's more like I don't know,
I
like
feel
an
like
8 o'clock.
I don't know. I think it's tough to tell. I think this lineup feels a little bit younger, but in terms of the circle, that's the one my brain circles back to. And knowing that we
Good
had,
bit.
another couple of years of Nelman and Dennis in the mix there, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that in terms of how I read it in the moment. But I mean, that lineup did lose a couple of big pieces. So
Yeah, there were some
who's to
bats.
say that
There was
that's
bats in that lineup that we lost that wasn't awesome, but yeah, I get your point.
Anyway, I guess my point in saying that is that this, for especially given the youth of that lineup this year, this feels like a floor setter to me, or at least maybe this is me trying to speak it into existence as a floor setter, right? If we want to see program growth, then maybe not necessarily the difficulty of the schedule is the factor here, but like this, hey, you are a 3 seed in the tournament, or you are making the tournament with consistency and not just, popping in and out and making it by the skin of your teeth. Like, this has to be, hey, this is where the floor is. And now as we layer on top that top 15 recruiting plus transfer class over and over and over, that's where we start to see, okay, now we're starting to make a dent in the ACC. We're maybe not, we're not necessarily matching up as well as possible against the Dukes, the VTs, the Florida States, whatever. But at least you're starting to take a game like out of that, not 6 games, that like 8 games, let's say 8, 9 games, you're taking like 2 or 3, right? And you're starting to make a dent over and over. At least, I guess the point I'm trying to say here, this is a build. I'm just really doubling back on your point, but I want to see that next level of growth that we did not see after the last tournament performance.
Right. Yeah. There was we had to go through the rebuild to get back to here, basically, since that.
But and to that point, I think sitting at this point, sitting at the same point 3 years ago now, I don't think that we expected there to be a rebuild process. Right, fair. Because we looked at that roster at the end of the year and we said, okay, Blake Nelman is here for 2 more years. Chandler Dennis is here for 2 more years. Mm-hmm. Pitching has always been this roster's most consistent problem. They have the bats. Oh, they'll lose 1 or 2 lineup pieces. For the most part, they're set together.
But don't they lose Voiles and Norton? Like, that's this is an off-season contact. We still got another week of season. Like, they could darn well win in Gainesville. I don't know. Like, we'll save this for.
I know I'm getting out over my skis, but I think the point that I want to make is that, like, you're right that this is a build. I think what we were missing in 22 is that next step, right? Next step of growth as a program. That is what I want to see out of that in the future.
They all want to see it. They want to see it.
I was going to say that's why I don't want to go way down that path yet, because they're still playing, right? Like, I very much fear that it could be okay. Now we got to go retool for a year or 2 or something like that. But until we get there, we don't know. And we live in a transfer portal world, and that's even way different than it was 3 years ago, right?
Who knows? Maybe they beat Florida and then they steal a recruit that was going to go to Florida, just like the lacrosse team did, and it all works. And it's all gravy. Who knows?
Just furiously taking notes on the SELC championship.
Beat Florida, steal players. Okay, got it. All right, cool. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Anyways, Friday is Friday 2:00. First game for softball. If they win, they will not play. They'll play 12 o'clock on Saturday. If they lose, they'll play 2:30 on Saturday. So no matter what, early afternoon game on Friday, early afternoon game Saturday. If they lose on Saturday, they'll have to play a second game unless they lost their Friday game. Just follow the calendar. Follow them on Twitter. You'll figure it out, or X or whatever you follow. Georgia Tech softball. Okay, only one men's basketball note, and that is we got the classic post-NIL era of I'm back or I'm here to stay or Tech is home post this time for Bida Dongo, who is coming back for year 3. That's good. I like that. That'll be.
Did he do it
official
Jordan
thumbs
style?
Up.
Did he do it Jordan style, or did he do it like Georgia Tech football style, where they all posted like the big or they did like the Instagram posts?
It was
paint me a word picture here.
It was just one of his generic photos with just in like that said Tech is home behind him. It was a very standard Georgia Tech post, like nothing too the graphics you would expect to see. So nothing too crazy there. On golf, so right now is the NCAA Regional stage of the college golf season. The number 25 Jackets are currently at the Auburn Regional. Today was round 1. There are 3 rounds between today and Wednesday. You need to finish top 5 in this tournament to move on to the NCAA Championship tournament. We were ranked as the 4th or 5th best team coming into this tournament. I think we're the 4th or somewhere in there. Anyways, right now we're 3rd after day 1, which is the good news. We're at 4 under. We are 9 shots back of Auburn, who was the number 1 ranked team in the country. So probably not going to get past the Tigers. We are 1 shot behind UCLA, 2 shots ahead of SMU, who's in fourth, and Purdue is 2 shots back. So we are 6 shots out of or 5 shots out of not qualifying right now. So plenty that can still change. At least today, Cale Fontenot had a good day. He shot 1 under with an eagle. Carson Kim shot 2 under 70. He had with a bogey on a par 5, but still had a ton of birdies today. Albert Hansen right now is not scoring, but only at 1 over. So overall, the team has played really well today, all within the top 31 players of eligible dudes right now. And looking at the overall leaderboard, Auburn's got the 1 and 2 people in the tournament. Granted, this is their home course, so that going to happen.
By the way, this is a very nice website from whoever put this together for the Auburn Regional.
Yeah, it is nice.
Just like a very nice looking website. I don't know why this has come to mind. This is my core competency at this point. Just putting out good web design.
The other notables in this tournament: Texas A&M, New Mexico State, TCU, and Little Rock. Probably at this point, College of Charleston, Oregon, Loyola, Maryland, and USC Upstate will not be qualifying unless they have a wild change of fortune going forward. So, anyways,
one other thing, by the way, I don't know, this is not related to the actual competition, but there's an independent from Kennesaw State that's 3rd right now. That's fun.
Maybe we go.
That's why the independents get bids. That's why they get bids. You get 5 teams and 1 individual per deal. Sounds like he'll be playing in nationals. That's what I'm hearing.
Clays Beauregard is his name. Maybe we go take this guy. Oh, he's a 4th year.
Beauregard.
He is a 4th year, so I guess we're not going to be taking this guy now that we're out of the COVID years, as Mr. Lovic had mentioned. Last couple notes before we finish up. Survivor, yes, Eva's still on the show. She's probably making the finale. I have no background info if she won the game or not, but the finale's next Wednesday, if anyone so cares to see if that happened. Track and field, their season's not over, actually. They have ACC Outdoors in a few days here out in North Carolina. And with that, I don't have anything left for Scions of the Southland 271, unless you guys have anything left for episode 271.
I've crossed over too many RPIs and stats and things like that since I started trying to run the USI today that I need to not look at any more numbers, and we can call it a day with no trivia at least. So.
Jake is converting to words for the rest of the evening. Let it be known, numbers are out the picture.
Yeah.
Take us home.
Yeah, as always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. Please email us fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com if you are a listener and want to pitch us a summer episode, if you want to pitch us an interview, if you want to pitch us a topic, we are all ears. If you have feedback, if you have compliments or constructive criticism, we take it all, and we do appreciate your feedback at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. In the meantime, you can find us on Blue Sky at ftrsblog. Whatever comes after that. I don't know. Blue Sky's funky. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at From the Rumble Seat. You can find Section 103 on Instagram as well at Section 103, and you can find them at section103.com. Remember, code FTRS, 10% off. And you can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Tell your friends. We appreciate it. It's the best way for them to find us and all the rest. Until we speak again, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.